Hello, and we're live. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, and we have
Hello.
Mark. Hi, we have Mark Turi here, and
Hmm.
broadcasting live from way across the pond. So we
That's
might
right.
have a little bit of, feedback and a little bit of freezing, but that's okay. We can deal with it. So, how have you been? It's been a little while.
Uh, yeah, good actually. Unfortunately, I spent the last month really sick with a flu.
Oh, oh
I
God.
neglected, and I always every year get my flu shot, and I had a really busy semester at university, and unfortunately, about a month ago, actually, on December 8th, I think it was, I came down with a bad flu and I'm just literally getting over it. So if you're over the age of a
Oh,
certain age, and now I'm 40, and now flus and colds and stuff are, holding me back more than when I was in my 20s. And so, yeah, get your flu shot, get vaccinated for what you need to do, get healthy, stay healthy, and it was rough. It was actually a rough couple weeks. So thankfully, yes, thankfully I'm much better. But happy New Year's to everyone. Happy holidays. I celebrated Hanukkah. It was about a month ago when I was sick,
oh,
unfortunately. But also
yeah.
Merry Christmas and whatever holidays you all celebrate. I
Yes.
hope it was, you know, a nice time for everyone.
Yeah, it was very nice, and Happy New Year
Yep.
for everybody, right?
2024.
Yeah. So we got friends coming in. Hi, everybody. I'm just popping up some greetings.
I see
Breeziness
Freezy
says,
new project.
"Yep,
Yeah.
hope you're
Hey,
feeling better, Mark. Great to see you."
thankfully.
Yes, Lene and Joel, Maya, everybody.
Renee.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
So, so, yeah, ask an SP. So you have a lot of knowledge and just a lot of input about the ins and outs of I don't even know what to say, how to really express it, but I want to get kind of into the beginnings of auditing, and Dianetics was the first um,
Hmm.
offering as far as Scientology goes, but it was touted as a science of mental health, right? And
Correct.
I guess my first question, and I know it's going to be a really long answer, and I'm here for it. Um,
Hmm.
what what exactly is Dianetics auditing, and how does it, just maybe do an overview, and then we'll kind of get into the nitty gritty of it. How
Sure.
does it
Sure.
how does it differ from what we know as what I loosely know as quote regular auditing of in Scientology today, even?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most basic question to answer first is the difference between Dianetics and Scientology auditing, and then the auditing on the OT levels. It's very, very, very like it's actually pretty simple. On Dianetics auditing, there is no e-meter. You do not use the e-meter at all. Okay, and we
Hmm,
can get into the actual processes, which we will get into because that's what I learned. I did
that's
my
interesting.
of my first three courses in Scientology, two of them were on Dianetics auditing, and again, I'll get into that momentarily. But when you do Dianetics auditing, there's no e-meter. It's just
Really?
an auditor and then the pre-clear. When you go on to Scientology auditing, and please understand that I don't have any firsthand knowledge of this. I only have, talking from people who were on what were called the grades. The e-meter is introduced. Okay, so I only did method one word clearing. That's like the basic bottom of the barrel on the training side, and that was I received it. I didn't learn how to do it, but that has to do with the e-meter. So introducing the
Okay.
e-meter is a totally different game. And
Right.
grade from 0 to 5, there's specific lists and questions that the auditors ask. And the basics of it is kind of similar because the auditor is asking questions and the pre-clear is originating answers. So there's some basic fundamentals that overlap, but it's the
Right.
e-meter really that is. And then once you get to the OT, it's a lot of it is solo auditing. Not on
Yeah.
OT5, for example, but a lot of it is solo auditing. And again, please understand that the differences with the e-meter. And that device is introduced in the grades and then in the OT levels. So Dianetics is two people sitting
Mm.
across from each other doing a process without the meter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Somehow
Yeah,
I missed that. That's good to know. So that's just the basic difference. So what when you approach the Dianetics auditing, I know you're trying to deactivate or get rid of the reactive mind, right?
correct,
So
correct.
what does that look like as far as when you went into it yourself? Like, did you start I can't remember. I know I remember some of your story, but
Sure, sure.
Was it Dianetics itself that kind of got you interested in Scientology? And
Yes,
what
absolutely.
fascinated what was the appeal
Yeah.
and what was, um, kind of your entrance as far as Dianetics goes?
Well, at the time, I had been visiting a psychologist, excuse me, not a psychiatrist, but a psychologist. And like many people that get into Scientology, if you have a previous experience that either isn't working with a therapist or isn't going very well with a therapist, whether or not that's true, Scientology will exploit that anyway. They'll tell you, oh, they don't know what they're talking about and whatever. So, how I got into Scientology was basically through Dianetics. And it was through Dianetics simply because I wanted to be able to be an auditor and not just a Dianetics auditor, but eventually go up the lines to be a Scientology auditor. And
Mhm,
that's what a lot of people want to do when they get into Scientology. Of course, when I was on staff, I was in Treasury division and the executive division, so it had nothing to do with auditing. But again, this is where the deception starts. So for me,
right, yeah,
when I went through my first experience in Scientology, and I won't go too far into the weeds because I did talk about it in other
yeah,
places, but it was in
mhm,
LA. And one of the first books I bought was Dianetics, and then I also bought a DVD that sort of introduced the concepts of Dianetics. And I'm a visual learner, so the DVD helped me because there was a lot of visuals. And
mhm,
that was really what prompted me to then call the Toronto org. And this is back in the June of 2005, long time ago now, 19 years almost, and start my first course, which was called the Hubbard Dianetics Seminar. And that is the first course that you do to become a Dianetics auditor. The second course I did was called Success Through Communications, but the third course I did was called the Hubbard Dianetics Auditor course. And once I graduated that, which was took about maybe half a year, I can't even, half a year or a year, somewhere around there, then I became a Dianetics auditor, which meant that I can still actually remember some stuff to do auditing. Of course, I would never do it because we could get into the negatives and
right,
stuff like
yes.
that after.
We definitely will,
However,
yeah.
at that yeah, and however, at that time, I could actually do Dianetics auditing to anybody. And I did also lots of hours of what's called twinning. So like a twin,
Mhm,
like someone. So basically co-auditing. So I'd audit someone, they'd audit me. I did hundreds of hours of that. So I logged in at least 400 hours of twinning. So I had a lot of experience in Dianetics auditing.
mhm,
And really what it was helping people. That's the carrot that they dangle in your face, that you can actually handle people's conditions, that you can help them, you know, uh, be better people. And yeah, a lot of that has to do with this introduction of what you mentioned with the reactive mind, because in Dianetics, we're told that the reactive mind is what's holding us back. It's what's the cause for our, they wouldn't say mental illness, but that's basically the term we would use today. Psychosomatic illnesses. If there's anything wrong with you at all, it's because of your reactive mind. And the goal of Dianetics, and this is where the term clear comes from, is to clear your reactive mind. And you're taught in Dianetics that you can do that. Of course, there's always deception in Scientology. You
yeah,
don't clear your reactive mind until you can do the grades. So there's something called a Dianetics clear and then a Scientology clear. But again, at the bottom of the barrel, as I was learning through these Dianetics courses, the seminar, then the auditor's course, it seemed like, okay, I could clear people on Dianetics and make them better, essentially better people. It's
Right.
people that weren't as anxious. If they had illnesses, they could get over it, and so on. And we can get in again. I know we can get into a lot of things, but
Yeah. Okay,
the
so
claims also and whatever. So yeah,
right. So the reactive mind in essence was anything like negative, right? Like or
yes.
things that you're creating for yourself to basically trip yourself up. So it's like things like what? Like fear, negative
hmm
thoughts, what else?
Basically, in Scientology, you learn that there's um, it's usually called dualism in philosophy. So not do you just have a mind, you also have a body, and they're separate entities. And then you learn that the mind itself is dual, so it has two
Mhm.
components. So
Mhm.
the first is there's an analytical mind and there's a reactive mind. Basics of the analytical mind is if you think about things that are rational, reasonable, and if you make good decisions, essentially. So if you're using your reactive mind, um, to better your survival, to better yourself, you walk into a room, for example, and there's you see a free chair that's open in the room, you go and you sit down, like these little things that are good decisions, that they're logical choices, little things that you make subconsciously, but they don't harm you in any way. They're sort of, again, they're reasonable, they're rational. That's your
Right.
analytical mind. But the reactive mind is really the opposite. It's where fear is stored, it's where anxieties are stored, psychosomatic illnesses. And in the reactive mind, and this is a very important concept to Dianetics, are what are called engrams.
Mhm.
So engrams are called mental image pictures. L. Ron Hubbard uses the example of a film reel, like a 35 or 16 millimeter film reel, and how every frame is like an engram, and it's all part of this big, you know, um, reel that's stored in your reactive mind. And that's where traumatic incidences are stored. So,
Mhm.
one example that I like to give, and this is a very basic example from Dianetics, is if you were ever out and you fell off your bike, just riding your bike around and you fell off your bike and you hit the ground. Obviously, what happens then is your analytical mind shuts off. And when you're in that moment of trauma, the reactive
Yep.
mind takes over. The
Yep.
key here is that the reactive mind still records, even if you're unconscious, still records
Mhm.
what people are saying, still records how people are acting, still records the smells, everything. So if somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh my God, like, let's say it's Marilyn, you were a child, you fell off your bike. Oh my God, Marilyn can't breathe. Oh my God, Marilyn's hurt. Oh my God." So that person saying those words, they actually get recorded into your reactive mind. And so when something similar happens again, you're going to be re-stimulated. So maybe you'll have asthma, or maybe you'll find that you have a headache. Your headache comes back, or your knee pain comes back. Like whatever trauma that you experienced when you fell off your bike, okay,
Right.
just by someone saying something like they can't breathe or they hurt themselves or whatever, that can then be restimulated. So the entire point of Dianetics is essentially to go through all of your engrams, and by doing so, you release those negative projections and those negative feelings and the trauma. And so then you don't have your reactive mind and you only have your analytical mind. I do want to mention it's all BS.
Right.
There's no
Yeah.
evidence for
Yeah.
any of this, but that's besides the point, right?
I can see right. I mean, I can see how it makes sense to people, but again, they call
Yeah,
it a science. There's no studies, there's really no
no.
science to it because it can't be proven. And I was
No.
thinking about this as the you say there's, two different parts of the mind in Scientology, the analytical and the reactive. Um
Mhm.
I have a couple thoughts on that. One thing is your analytical mind is your god-like state because you're supposed to be
Rational
a
more.
but
Yeah,
right, but you're supposed oh, okay. Well, in Dianetics is not it's not a religion yet, right? So,
that's right.
I was thinking as they took it into quote the spiritual aspect. um,
Mhm.
that's supposed to be the state that you came to be in, and that you want your perfect state that you want to get back to. Because yeah, all right. So let me ask you this.
Sort of, yeah.
All right.
It
So let
it
me
it
ask.
get it eventually gets there, again, when we talk
Okay.
about the thetan, but initially Dianetics is not religious, it's supposed to be
Okay.
secular, and it's supposed to be more psychological. But you're on the
Okay.
right track because it's going, and I'll mention for sure the link between Dianetics and Scientology, which I'll just spoiler alert, has to do with thetans in past lives.
Right. So are there
However,
any mention of thetans? I only read like the first chapter of Dianetics in 1989
no,
because I
not in
like
that,
the.
not that.
Okay. So no mention of
Thetans
being a.
are not the thetans are not now past lives are, and again, we can use that as a bridge forward when we get into that
Mhm,
transition. However, thetans are not a part. You don't learn that. You learn that in Scientology. Dianetics, really, what it is now, in 2024, and what it was back in 2005, is simply an introduction to Scientology. Okay. It
mhm,
simply gets you into the idea of being audited and really, really changing your memories and being exposed to some of Scientology's deceptive, you know, techniques. And then you want more. So then you keep going up the bridge, essentially.
right,
But
right.
it's not a spiritual anything. It's supposed
Okay,
to be a science.
gotcha,
It's a pseudoscience, but it was supposed to be a science.
gotcha. So I have some things
Yeah.
started already. I wanna kinda do this as we
Of
go
course. Yeah. Of
along, so
course.
we don't end up with a ton of things at the end. So Maya says, "Oh, I forgot to say good morning to Rodney."
There's a few of them today.
Yes. This is He's intact. I don't
Right.
wanna show him too much because I guess some people were getting in trouble, like Aaron, but I don't seem to have a problem with him. I actually have Rodney merch now, and it cleared fourth wall, so but yeah, and then, I have a rainbow Rodney that I'm working on
Yep.
and a couple
Representation.
other. Yes,
We're
and a
very
couple others,
inclusive.
so
Rodney is a very
yes,
tolerant and inclusive person. I like that. Very liberal.
yes, I like him. So, yeah, and I have to make 4 more of those. So, yes, good morning, Maya. And we got a couple of comments from
Of
Freezinu
course.
Project and some questions. Question mark. Other than being a lawyer, who is Blinky and why is she called that? If you know, sorry if it's off topic. That's
Yeah.
Monique Yingling, right?
Yes. And it's just
Yes.
it's her facial expressions. She sort
Yeah.
of has weird kind of eyes and facial expressions, and they call her Blinky McBlinkface. You know,
Yeah. And some people would
who's not
say
a, who's
body
not a
language wise.
Scientologist.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
some people would say body language wise, if you're blinking a lot, it's probably because she's nervous, because she's lying through her teeth. That could be,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. She's the
Oh,
spokesperson who's not, yeah, not a Scientologist, apparently a Catholic, etc. Yeah, very
right,
odd thing, but yeah.
right. FXP says, "That's funny. I would hope my mind records things more like a solid state hard drive and less like an 8 millimeter film strip."
Yeah. You'd think so, right? Yeah, 8 mil, 16 mil, super 16, 35, whatever, 70. Yeah.
Anything, anything. Right. Okay. One more question from FXP. Question mark. Would it be fair to say the book Dianetics targets a person from the respect that you are all powerful and this book will help you get back to that? That's kind of the question
Just
I had too,
yeah,
but
to
it's
some
not
degree,
really a
yes.
religious. Okay. So,
To some degree, yes. And remember that if you're the claims in Dianetics are that if you are clear, you have perfect memory recall, you won't need glasses, you won't have asthma anymore. Like so there is a kind of, I wouldn't call it like an Ubermenschish, that's more in Scientology, but you still will be higher than, us people. You're not yet a homo novus, which is what Scientology and OT gives you. You become a new man, but you're kind of on the way, put it that way. You're a little bit more evolved than us mere, I don't, the W word, or degraded beings or
right,
whatever. So yeah, it's
right.
your first step.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense because something that Aaron said in our stream last week, or maybe it was when I told my story. Um, he said that before they introduced all this kind of what I call foo nunu, stuff about
Hmm.
spontaneous creation, where it was like a and it was like a big bang. It was like a spiritual big bang, or whatever. And the Thetans showed up, and then they got bored and they started creating all kinds of trouble for themselves. And then they got amnesia and all that. Before all that happened, I mean, Dianetics pretty much could have been like a self-help thing that kind of made a little sense, but
Mhm.
then they kind of just like, like they said, the proverbial frog boils in the water, you know, eventually you're accepting all this stuff that is just way out there. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that there's no evidence for that is part of self-help. One of the biggest ones is Myers-Briggs personality tests. Like
Hmm.
there's absolutely no evidence at all that Myers-Briggs works, but like if you sit down and do the test, like who cares? I did it in a
Right.
college class in the United States 10 plus years ago. Who care? Like who cares? So at that point, like if someone wants to just read Dianetics with someone and do it, the only problem is though, for something like Dianetics, and that you wouldn't happen in a Myers-Briggs, is that it probably involves hypnosis, and it's not, you're not willingly a part of it, so there's an ethical question. But also there is this false memory syndrome, which we can get into with the past lives stuff,
Yep.
which could be damaging. But again, at what level compared to what something else? Like is it worse than doing something that's also like high dangerous activity, like like is it worse than doing heroin all day? Like, you know what I mean? Like you can make
Right.
these kinds of
Yeah.
subjective what ifs all day. But to me, Dianetics is just not helpful. But if somebody wanted to do it rather than getting into Scientology, it's certainly cheaper, and it's certainly something
Right.
that you probably will get into and not like, and then just never do it again. So, you know, that's an
Right.
advantage
So
at least there.
is it considered, say I bought a Dianetics book right now, right?
Mhm.
And I said, "Hey Mark, let's do this," right? So we start auditing each other, right? Or whatever. Is that considered squirreling?
No, 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 because we're using, as long as we have bought Dianetics, the
Mhm.
basics, okay? The old copy that I read, which was pre-2007, okay, that's not, that could be, I guess, considered squirreling, or it's not. But if we actually went to buy the hardcover or the paperback of the basics, the new version post-2007, Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, and even if
Mhm.
we just found it in a bookstore somewhere that had nothing to do with Scientology, or we found it online and we sat down and we did that, the tech in that book is considered canon, basically for the
Right.
all intents and purposes, it's kosher.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so we have to follow those instructions. It's
Right.
100% tech. We would only squirrel it if we were learning that from the
Mhm.
the past books and with an auditor that's in like the free zone or an independent Scientologist. Other than that, you buy the book, you do it, and that's considered good tech.
Gotcha. So you've kind of laid the groundwork of, what Dianetics is, what the purpose is, how
Mhm.
it's um people get into it, what it is, what it isn't, as far as it's not religion yet, it's
Yeah.
touted as a science. So what does it look like when you start to approach the quote tech, which that can be, you know, also a bone of contention, as far as like it's really
Yeah.
not. Technology and science to me means something totally different. But so
Sure.
so so it's basically centered around this Dianetics auditing. So you've described a
Mhm.
little bit what auditing is and what the purpose is, but what does it look like in practice?
It's a great, great, quick question, and a lot of people like to ask this question. So it's something where when you get Dianetics auditing, it's part of the book and it's part of the courses, which is you should be in a quiet room, so where there's no distractions, okay? And you have two chairs that are supposed to be facing each other, that are 3 feet apart from each other. And
Okay.
so one, it doesn't matter where you sit, doesn't matter. It's right, left, who cares? But
Mhm.
you sit across. If you're the auditor, you're sitting across from the pre-clear. And every auditor will have a piece of paper or multiple piece of papers, and you'll draw a line like right in half, like almost like those accounting type of paper where there's lines
Mhm.
right in the middle. And you're basically uh, starting off a process, and then you're listening to the pre-clear, you're writing things down, But the actual session, and I'll go back a little bit. So how you start a session in Dianetics is you're sitting across from the person. I'm the auditor. Let's say Marilyn, you're the pre-clear. And I have to ask you a couple very basic questions. And the questions would be, have you eaten today? Have you had a full night's sleep, at least 8 hours? Like,
Okay.
are you hungry? Is there something? These are called rudimentaries or rudiments. And so these are
Mhm.
the things that, if the pre-clear is tired, if the pre-clear is hungry, if the pre-clear is distracted, you have to get that out of the way first. Okay. So that's the most
Okay.
basic thing. And even in Scientology auditing, they overlap with this. So once that's out
Okay.
of the way, let's just say everything is positive. You slept 8 hours, you ate a big breakfast, you're not distracted, nothing happened on the way to the org. Great. So what I do as the auditor is I ask you to close your eyes. So you're supposed to close your eyes, and the auditing session for Dianetics, the pre-clear has their eyes closed. In Scientology auditing, I don't think that they do. I'm pretty sure that they don't. But you
Okay.
close your eyes, and I basically count down and snap my fingers. Okay. Now, this is hypnosis. There's no bones about it. It is.
Hmm,
And so when
interesting.
you have your eyes closed, Marilyn, I'm going to ask you a question, okay, about a past trauma. So I got to fish
Oh,
a little bit.
wow.
I've got to
Yeah.
fish a little bit.
Mhm.
So I've got to ask you something like, and again, please understand that this has been almost 20 years. So if anybody in the comments later, or is in the chat, who is an ex-Scientologist who remembers a lot more than I do, please, please, please add
Yeah,
add
we're not
you
really
know
doing
add
it.
extra
Yeah.
contribution.
Yeah.
But
We're
because we're
just
not really doing it. But
we're not trying to do it. Yeah.
let's just say you have, your back hurts. Okay, it's a very common thing. Your back hurts. So
Okay.
then why does your
Yeah.
back hurt? Well, as the auditor, I'm going to hold on to that, and I'm going to ask you to remember a time when your back hurt. That's the question. What you're going to do is you're going to
Okay.
start saying a very specific incident in chronological order. You're going to say, last week, I was sitting on my couch watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine with Duncan, and I got up.
How'd you know?
Exactly. And, I pulled my back muscle. And then you're done with that. That's your engram, okay?
Okay.
Because it's trauma. So what I'm
Okay.
going to do is I'm going to ask you about, what sounds do you hear? And then you're going to go back to the beginning and say, okay, I was sitting on my couch with Duncan. We were watching. Kira was doing something, and I heard yelling, or okay. And then I
Mhm.
got up and my back hurt. I might ask you, what did you say? What did Duncan say when your back hurt? Did he say something? Oh, yes, he said, oh my God, your back hurts. You know what I mean? And we're going to go over this entire thing, and you're going to start adding to the story about smells, about sounds, about touches, about everything, until
Mm.
you get this long, long, long story. And what I'm looking for as the auditor is very specific here. I'm looking for you to start to feel better, to look like you're better, look like you're smiling, look like you feel happier.
Mhm.
So as you're repeating and repeating this story and repeating this story and repeating this story, your emotions go through up, down, and then up again. It is so manipulative, because you're going to
Wow.
start
Yeah.
right here. Oh, I got up and whatever. And at a certain point, you're going to get angry. Almost every single person who I audited at the middle of this point is like, oh, I got off. I did this, I did that, and then finally, I'm looking for your mood to then go back up. So only when, Marilyn, you're
Mm.
like, oh my, let's say it's the 10-second story turns into a 5-minute story. So at the
Mhm.
end of the final 5-minute story, you're all happy. Oh yeah, I did this and my back and whatever. That's when I know you've blown your charge and the engram is gone. The engram is no longer in your reactive mind. And that's when we can
Uh-huh.
come out of the session, or I can go on to another engram. It really just depends.
Hmm.
So there's a whole bunch of things that I can do after that, because it's also possible to get rid of an engram and it take an hour. and you're supposed to be in session for 2.5 hours. So you might only blow 1 or 2 engrams or 3 engrams or 10 engrams in a 2.5 hour session. And then
Oh,
the last part about it is when the 2.5 hours are coming up, I say, I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, snap my fingers, and you will feel alert. 10,
really? So
9,
it is
8,
wow.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you open your eyes, and you're supposed to be what's called keyed out. So you're supposed
Yeah.
to be exhilarated. You're supposed to be happy. And let me tell you, the first time I ever did Dianetics auditing after a 2.5 hour session, I felt like I was on cloud 50,000. Okay.
Wow.
Like not cloud nine. Cloud nine is all the way down there. I was like so, uh, just, we call it, it's called keyed out,
Yeah.
just amazed, you know? And
Yeah.
so that's an auditing session in Dianetics. Very
Wow.
general. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But it basically is hypnosis, right? I mean, that's what you're trying to practice as far as, you know, kind of setting the stage, getting somebody, to follow your lead, follow your
Hmm.
words, a little bit maybe NLP kind of uh stuff going on. And I
Yeah.
was thinking as you were talking, um, how this could be very appealing because people like to be in touch with, their feelings, with, have like, who wants to have a backache? A lot of people do have backaches. I had one
Yeah.
this morning. But yeah, to to focus on the self-focus and have somebody listening to you, I can see how it would, kind of draw you in. And then having that feeling of euphoria or keyed out, as you say,
Yeah.
at the end of it when you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna snap my fingers," which I didn't know about the snap the fingers part. But it's interesting that, like, they came up with, the e-meter and things, and that way you don't have to be watching for someone's reaction and be like, okay, they blew
That's
their
right.
engram or whatever, right? So instead of the e-meter, you're watching for their reaction and their body language and their facial expressions. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Wow,
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. You're looking for exuberance and exhilaration, essentially. And only when that happens is when you move on. So it's very emotionally manipulative because, as I said, your people's emotions go through these 3 stages. It starts off in relative benign boredom, and then it goes all the way down to people getting very angry and frustrated, but they're still doing it, by the way. They're
Mm,
still with their eyes closed and they're still telling you the engram, but people get very frustrated, angry. And then eventually they come out at the other end feeling exhilarated and feeling
yeah.
very, enthusiastic and, full of ecstasy and whatever, you know.
So what do they usually
It,
get
it
angry at? Like their backache? Like what are they getting angry at?
No, because you can go through this engram dozens and dozens of times. And
Ugh.
so people are repeating the same story
So
and
they're
they're
getting
adding
sick
to
of
the
it?
same story and they're
So they're
getting they're getting sick of it. But see, this is the thing with
oh.
L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron
Ah.
Hubbard would say that if you're getting frustrated, you don't just stop. That's the step before your exuberance, which again is total manipulation of emotions.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
usually a good therapist, if you're doing trauma therapy with a good licensed therapist and you're getting triggered, you stop the session. You know what I mean? Whereas that's
Absolutely.
not what you do in Scientology. You keep going until you get the end phenomenon, the EP, which in this case is exuberance and whatever else and happiness. So as people have their, you could be going 20 minutes, 30 minutes, like I got up this morning and I felt this, and then, okay, yeah, what did I smell? Okay, I smell, and people get like this, but they're still with their eyes closed. They're still giving
Wow.
you everything, but you can see them getting bored, getting frustrated, getting very angry. And then, like in a snap, they start to get back up there and you can
Wow.
go through that engram a couple times more, a couple more
Mhm.
stories, and their mood will get better and better and better. It is so unfortunate that that's not a good thing. Like, it seems like it could be a good thing, but it's so
No.
manipulative and it's so wrong and ethically wrong, and very morally and ethically wrong, I
It's
think. But
bullying. I
that's
mean,
really
it's
really what you're
yeah,
doing.
that's just fucking evil, I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah,
disgusting.
because
Yeah, it's
yeah,
absolutely disgusting.
so you as an auditor, your job is to basically have people go over and over and over and over to the point where they go down to the depths of being angry and frustrated and just wanna get out of there, and they physically can't because you're trained to make sure they don't, right?
That's right.
And then you get so relieved because when you start to, you know, come see the light at the end of the tunnel, I would be relieved to get the hell out of that room too, after having to
Yeah.
repeat the most rudimentary, stupid thing about getting off the couch and
Mhm.
having my back hurt happens all the time, you know?
Yeah,
That's
like, and what did
insanity.
Duncan say? And what did the TV say? And what did you smell? "Oh, well, we were cooking dinner and I could smell chicken." You know what I mean? And then it just
Oh my
adds to the
god.
story. "Oh, and then, someone came down from upstairs and was screaming, and this happened." And you're just building on this story and building on this story. And again, like clockwork, I mean, I did this 400 hours, okay? People do not get up in the middle. I've never seen anyone get up in middle of the session and walk out. Now, that doesn't mean it
Yeah.
doesn't happen. I just haven't seen it. And
Desensitizing,
ev
that's a good point.
and every single time after a stretch of that frustration, there's a moment when the moods go up. It happened every single time. And I
Mhm.
don't know what I was doing because obviously I'm
Yeah.
hypnotizing someone, not knowing that I'm hypnotizing them. But I don't
Mhm.
even know what I'm doing or what I'm saying. I just got to know that I have to look for that observation of that scale up. You know what I mean?
Right,
It,
right.
it it was such an odd phenomenon. And obviously, if you're a trained hypnotist, I'm sure people can actually tell me what's going on. But I wasn't a trained hypnotist. I mean, I didn't know anything about hypnotherapy. I was doing this Dianetics. And people who do auditing are not qualified at all to do these, manipulative techniques. All I'm
Yeah.
interested in is finding that curve upwards from the curve down to the curve up. And I'm looking for the curve up. And
Right,
again,
and you're
I do
trained to
not
cause
know.
it. You cause the
Yes,
downward
yes.
because you're just, you know, browbeating them and being like, "Repeat this, repeat this, repeat this." Honestly,
Repeat it
it
over and
really
over again.
it reminds me of some of, the, quote, "prayer sessions," which is just basically handlings in my cult,
Yeah.
where my cult leader would discern from the Lord would tell her that I had some hidden rebellion or something. So I would go
Mhm,
in there with no clue, kind of freaking out. They would put themselves basically into a trance-like state, start, closing
mhm,
their eyes, speaking in tongues, laying hands on me, and the quote, God, the Lord would talk to them. And then they would basically bring me down to the state where I'm groveling on the floor, crying over
mhm,
like
mhm.
admitting to things, admitting to having a spirit of Achan and Jezebel and all. And I didn't even know what the hell, but it was like I I would just like fall into this like state of being like mush. And then guess what? They brought me into that state and then they lifted me back up. The Lord forgives
Mhm.
you. You're righteous again. You're chosen. You're fine. And then it was like I was fine when I went in there. But they
It
caused the
it's
injury. Cults fucking do that. Sorry, I get feisty when I think about cults, but yeah,
oh, you
they
should. I mean,
cause
get passionate.
they inflict the injury, and then they give you the solution. It's just disgusting. Yeah,
Um, Similar things
wild.
happen if there are, um similar things happen if chanting is involved, but if it's manipulative, because chanting is totally fine, meditation
Yeah,
is totally fine. But there are
yeah.
manipulative techniques and it's very similar. So if you sit and you're meditating, you're going to go through something similar, maybe.
Mhm.
And also if you're chanting, because there will always be a time when you're starting off, you feel some enthusiasm, then it kind of gets to that even boredom. And then it goes down because you're getting bored and you're getting frustrated. Why am I still sitting here? And then maybe you might end on a high note. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's always manipulative.
Right.
It could be just
Yeah.
in people's
Well,
heads that they're starting to
I
get bored or
think
whatever. But
yeah, and I
specifically
think
in Dianetics, it is
consensual
manipulative.
yeah, yeah, and I
Yeah.
think if I always, believe in, informed consent, right? And,
Yeah.
like,
Mm,
my mother-in-law used to used to do a lot of yoga and different things, and she would explain what she was doing and how she liked it, and what you went through, the process, the books and everything. And it wasn't really my thing, because after leaving a cult, I really, I like to be kind of more in the here and now,
Yep.
and deal with things as they come up, but I don't look for it. But yeah, I can see, well, things are just a tool that can be used for good or for bad. And if you're using it to manipulate and hurt people, then that's of course bad. And if you're not explaining the truth as it is,
Yeah.
and you're kind of putting this polished label on it and inflicting, yeah, that would make me go insane. And that's what happened in my call, all the indoctrination and everything. And I always say that crocheting kind of saved me, because it gave me
Yeah.
something to do so I wouldn't leave my body. So he
Yeah.
says hi. Yeah. So
Well,
it kind of, yeah.
I would just say also too that um, when you talk about informed consent, L. Ron Hubbard believed, and he mentions this in a video called "An Introduction to Scientology." It doesn't, the details of which, who cares? But you can look that up. Aaron has talked about it.
Mhm.
He says that everyone on Earth has been hypnotized and we're all asleep. And so what Dianetics and Scientology does is it wakes us up, but that's not a thing. You know what I mean? Like to say, well, everyone is asleep, everyone's in the matrix. And so we're just giving everyone, what is it, blue pills, I guess. Like that's not a thing. That doesn't exist. Um,
Right. Right. Just like later on with the body thetans, supposedly there are these thetans that are stuck to you, and they're like asleep, and they're kind of like have amnesia, and I think Mark's frozen. You frozen? He might pop out and come back in. But yeah, I'm gonna go through some of, oh yeah, he's coming back, I think. Okay. Oh, Stay Spiria. Yes, thank you for the suggestion. That was a great suggestion. Oh, some of the Rodneys fell. But yes, thank you. That's amazing. Great. That was a really great idea. Hi, everybody. He'll come back. Come back. Okay, those questions were from Mark. I'll go down. Okay, there's a question for me. We'll work on that. FXP question, Marilyn. I'm curious if, thinking back on it, did you just say those things to get through it and out of there, or did you believe it? Probably not what you thought in the moment. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think both, depending on the time and maybe like at first I didn't really, but when you're broken down with, food deprivation, sleep deprivation. Oh, yeah, he's coming back, he said. Um, all of these factors, and you're getting to where you don't trust yourself anymore. You're told that you have a sin nature, and a quote old man. You're told that you have demons talking to you. You're told you have the devil talking to you. You're told that you're not able to function basically without what Marlene would call the Holy Spirit, but it was really mostly her dictates. And coupled with all of this, prayer and meditation, the tongues, the repetition, having people physically lay hands on you, and they're an authority figure. You feel very vulnerable. So, yeah, oh, here he is. You're back. Yay. I was
distance,
just,
bad internet. Nah, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I was just answering that question about when I went through that process, and I was just saying a little bit of both. I didn't really believe it at first, but then I was convinced, and you get to where you're basically, and I was thinking about this with the Dianetics. You're saying you're putting yourself in a room. It's got to be 3 feet apart. You close your
Mhm.
eyes. You're basically presenting yourself. Here I am. Do whatever, and that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. And that's what I
So
did.
sorry,
I
Marilyn.
trusted them.
Yeah, sorry, Marilyn. So the point I just wanted to conclude before I went off is that L. Ron Hubbard believed we were all asleep, and then auditing wakes us up, and essentially it's like in the Matrix. We all get blue pills, and we all sort of wake up to this reality. And of course, it's just a belief. It's ridiculous that human beings can't interpret reality or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of
Right.
realities, subjective, objective. There's metaphysics and philosophy, whatever, right? But essentially, yes, there are conditions where people's realities are disconnected through different kinds of cognitive and mental health issues. At the same time, no one is asleep. You don't need Dianetics to wake you up. Dianetics it puts you to sleep, and it definitely changes your reality. So that's just BS.
Mhm. I have a couple questions for you. My question: does the Dianetics say that you can heal anything? Is it okay to go to the doctor? Good question.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, if you find an engram that is the source of your asthma, your cataracts, your arthritis, then Dianetics is supposed to cure you of those things. And is it okay to go to a doctor? Generally, yes, but when you're auditing, it's so random. You're not supposed to take like aspirin for whatever reason. There's no reason given. You're just not supposed to. So, and tranquilizers and things like this. Like there's a certain list of things that you're not supposed to do when you're auditing, which by the way also includes meditation, yoga, and chanting and things like this, because they're
Hmm,
called mixed practices. But the reason of
interesting.
which L. Ron Hubbard never discloses ever, so it's just you can't take aspirin. Okay, you know what I mean? But can you go
Right.
see a doctor? Yes, most Scientologists, they will see doctors and get medical advice, but sometimes it's too late. And this is why a
Mhm.
lot of Scientologists may die of preventative measure cancers and heart disease and stuff like this because they just wait too long to see a doctor. They think the auditing is going to do something first.
Right.
And so
Right. So they're not saying
unfortunately it
it's
doesn't.
yeah, there was this thing in my, cult too, where it was like, "Well, you can, but if you were really trusting God and doing things right, you wouldn't need to." So there's that, sets up this conflict and this kind of cognitive dissonance where it's like, "Well, you know, I believe that I can go to the doctor, but why would I if this has the answer?" And, you wanna be a good follower of the doctrine or whatever. So, yeah, I could see that where it's like just seems like you can't trust yourself and your own reasoning skills. It's funny that they call it the analytical mind's supposed to be good, but then they remove your ability to analyze things because like, don't take aspirin because I said so. Right?
Yeah. There's
Because
absolutely no
yeah.
reason for it, but yeah, that situation reminds me of you're locked in a room and the voice comes over a PA and says, "You go up to the door and turn the knob, and you'll walk out." But the knob is like flaming hot, so
Right.
it's like, well, I could turn the knob, but then I ruin my hand and my skin would come off, and I'd have third-degree burns. Oh, but you can still open the door. It's just, you know what I mean? It's like
Oh,
you
right.
can do it, but there's a
You can leave
preventative thing.
anytime. Right.
You can leave any time, but why would you, right? You can, yeah, you can,
Yeah.
yeah, you can
This
open
is
the
a
window, but why would you want to? It's perfect in here, yeah, whatever, right? Like
right.
just these excuses that people make to really what they're saying is you don't have control. You
Yeah.
can't do it.
Yeah. This is a really,
So,
really good
yeah,
point from Clearwater Cheryl 'cause about talking about emotions. This is a really good question. Yes, all this does is remove your ability to express your emotions. My dad is
yeah.
basically a honey badger.
Yeah,
So,
basically Scientology, the whole thing is all the TR drills, the training routines I mentioned with successor communication, all of those, all your auditing, all what's called the tone scale, the whole thing is to get you into a state where when someone ahead of you, so like a senior, someone in a higher position gives you an order, you don't talk back, you don't question it, you just do it. And then
right.
you, when you're ordering your people in your lower positions, it's the same thing. And you're supposed to have what's called tone 40 intention, which means that you walk up to someone and you give them the order and they do it. They don't ask anything. Because asking would be called Q&A. You're not allowed to do that. You do it. And then if I then turn, like, let's say I'm the one who receives an order. Okay. So then I
Mhm.
just do it for my senior. But 2 hours later, I'm giving an order to my junior. I have to have tone 40 intention. So they go do it. And that again is incredibly awful because even in the military, after so many years of having horrible things going on the field, it's okay for a junior officer to question the orders of a senior officer, and
Mhm.
especially if the senior officer says go and destroy these people over there, you can reject that. Okay, you
Right.
can't do
Yeah.
this in Scientology. You're not allowed. Your senior is your authority, and this is the part of the manipulation. It's so disgusting where you don't have any
Yeah.
recourse to be like no, because that's going to lead to a bad result. I'm going to do something unethical. It might be
Mhm.
illegal. It might be fraud. I might be defrauding. They don't care. If you just they give you the order, you do the order. That's it.
So besides auditing in Dianetics and practice of it, right? Are there do they have the TRs and the communications and all that, or is it pretty much mostly just the auditing in from the
Well,
book?
auditing is
The
separate from
main thing.
training routines. I mean, training routines again, you're in a room, quiet room, or sometimes you're doing it in a group with
Mhm.
people around because there's supposed to be a successor communications like a course room. So you might be next to people, but whatever. But you are still with two chairs, 3 feet in front of a person. And the TRs, I mean, there is a TR where someone who's will be you'll be standing like this, like almost like you're meditating with your eyes closed, and someone else will be looking at you, and the whole purpose, I think this is called OTTR0. The whole purpose is not to flinch, not to move, not to do anything, to literally sit. Some cases I did this for 2 or 3 hours one day. I guess 2.5 hours one day, and then continue to do it another 2.5 hours until I got a pass. But you're just sitting there, like doing nothing with your arms, sort of relaxed and this. And then there's another one where you're just staring at someone. I think that's like TR1 or something or whatever. And then there's these different routines. So what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to help you in your auditing sessions, but those are separate things. Still very manipulative because again, you've got
Yeah.
someone like let's say I'm like this and I get an itch in my nose and I just do this, flunk, you got to do it again. Okay, then you got to, you know, if you're looking at
Yeah.
someone in the eye and again you got to scratch, you got nope, flunk, you got to do it again, and it ends up taking hours. Okay, like unbelievable hours. And again, that's all just to work down. It's a very sneaky way to work down your resolve,
Yeah.
to work
Yeah.
down
Wear you
any
down.
energy that
Yeah.
you have.
Mhm.
So again,
Mhm.
someone gives you the order and you just go, okay, sure, yes, sir, and go do it.
Yeah, it shuts you
And
down
so
just like what
yeah,
Cheryl said, it's like you can't express yourself, your emotions, your own yeah, so and telling
and
you,
again, they're all
labeling
related, even though they're
yeah,
separate, they're all related. Yeah,
mhm. So, basically, Dianetics is about talking about the engrams and auditing
that's
is what
correct.
okay, okay.
Yeah, and then
So
again,
that's
the TRs get you ready. The TRs are supposed to increase your communication skills, but nobody can communicate in
Mhm.
Scientology because it's an echo chamber and they all
Yeah,
speak their own language. And so
right.
it's not really communication, it's
Good point.
being able to take an order and give an
Mhm.
order without any Q&A. So without any questions, without any analytics, without any critical thinking, without any, huh? You know what I mean? Like without those
Right.
reactions. And
Wow.
again, there's I hate this term obviously because it's a bad term used in America, but they're separate but equal in the sense that they're separate in the sense that they're two different subjects, but they're equal in the
Mhm.
sense that they're all part of this big, wheel of manipulation and cognitive dissonance and suppressing
Yeah.
your emotions and whatever. So again, they're separate in one side, but they all equate to one thing in the other one. And again, I hope that separate but equal wasn't a controversial thing. It's just that's how I look at it.
No,
That's the
makes
the
a lot
best
of
phrase
sense.
I can give it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Wasn't meant to
Decaldified
be
said
offensive. So
oh, no, not at all, I didn't take offense. Uh, Decaldified said, "Thank you both for doing this. This is absolutely the core of the trap. Rest of the
yeah,
BS builds on that." Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
This is
As
great.
soon
This is
as you
great,
as soon
Mark.
as you accept Dianetics, then anything else that you accept,
Mhm.
like then Scientology just becomes okay. Well, we're just going to introduce an e-meter. We're just going to ask a question, and then the whole continuity of the whole thing changes once past lives and the thetans come into effect because then you're just okay. Well, that's just what happens. Like that's
Yep.
Dianetics. That past lives were uncovered by some people. So, you know, and you
Right,
tell yourself
yeah,
these things. So, you know,
absolutely. Yeah, Cheryl said, "This is such a good conversation." Yeah, it was
no, thank you.
a great idea that you had, Mark, to start with, the no, seriously, Dianetics, because that is, like, the beginning of the house of cards, right? The
Mhm.
foundation of it
It's
all.
the founda
Yeah,
it literally is the foundation. I mean, they call Dianetics
yep.
book 1 for a reason.
Yeah,
That's what everyone is supposed to read first. That doesn't mean you have to read it first, but that's what you should. And once you get into those concepts and those ideas and those technical things, then, once you accept that, then you'll accept all the other stuff,
right. So get some
a
more star
domino
things.
effect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Freezy New Project said, question part one, Mark. I listened to a podcast a few years ago by a guy that was a licensed hypnosis. And he was explaining, like hypnotist, is that what we're talking about? A licensed hypnotist. And he was explaining how the e-meter putting low voltage through your body helps the process of hypnosis and
Oh, okay.
solidifies it more deeply in your mind. What are your
Hmm.
thoughts on this? And is this viable?
So again, I don't know. I don't really know how the e-meter works. I don't think a lot of people do because um, all the patents and all the designs are copyrighted by Scientology. And there's a lot of different e-meters, and there's the newest e-meter, which has a scam where you have to get it upgraded every few months, whatever. I
Right.
think the e-meter is a basic electronic um, device that it's run by a watch battery. Whether or not it can manipulate people, I don't really think it does anything important. I think that when you hold on to the meter, the it, the part of the e-meter that works is called a skin galvanometer. So our skin has energy and galvanization in our fingers, right?
Mhm.
That's why they call it one third of a lie detector. So a lie detector also has skin galvanization, but then it also has respiratory and heart rate. The e-meter just has your response. So what
Right.
I think is happening, in my opinion, is something that happens when you play a Ouija board, right? You're not talking to spirits when you play a Ouija board. There's an unconscious or subconscious thing that's going on with your fingers and people
Right.
manipulating the board. So that's what I think is happening. I think
Yeah.
when people are getting asked about stressful times, your muscles will contract. And so the e
Mhm.
meter will do this. When you're a bit more relaxed, it is possible to get what's called a floating needle, but I think it's all in your fingers. And of course, your fingers are connected to your nervous system, connected to your brain. So there is something that's going on that's more than just your fingers, right? How
Mhm.
you're squeezing, how you're releasing, and so forth. So that's what I think is going on. And it's only a watch battery. So I think it's like 200 volts or whatever, 20 volts. I can't even remember. So basically, that's
Yeah.
what I think is happening. I think when you're relaxed, the e-meter is going to give you a floating needle. When you feel
Yeah.
more tense, you might do what's called a rock slam, or you might get these kinds of different things. But I really think it's you, and I really think it's your body and your fingers and your skin. So to me, it doesn't do anything. It's not magic, and that's all.
Right.
I mean, I guess it's weird. It's a very strange thing, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really think there's anything honestly too special even about it, you know,
Yeah, and
in
I've
my
heard
opinion.
ex-Scientologists that talk about how they were able to beat it by just having thoughts about, their favorite band or some
Mhm.
fuzzy, animals or whatever. Yeah, just think about
And I
things and
and
the
I think that that's
little thought.
a response for your nervous system, because when you're
Mhm,
relaxed and you have your hands out like this and you're thinking of something, you're not tense. That's how I
mhm,
would explain it, but again, I could be wrong, I don't know.
mm.
Maybe there is a mystery.
So, Clearwater Cheryl, great input, Cheryl, great input. I watched my family be hooked on auditing even after leaving the cult. They would still pay to get audited by the free zone people. So
Yeah.
you would say it was addicting? It can be addicting, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why a lot of, addicts, it's very hard to put it to say, but this is one of the reasons why a lot of ex-drug addicts, and I knew when I was in staff in Berlin, lots of ex-alcoholics, people who smoked pot, did cocaine, did, ecstasy, whatever, because they're chasing a high. So when you do drugs for the first time, it's the best you'll ever have. And then after that,
Mhm.
it's not as good, and you keep chasing that high. And really, that's what's happening in Scientology. The first time you get high on auditing is the best, and then you just chase that feeling basically for years. It's really, again, it's also very disgusting and manipulative.
Yeah, definitely. Very well said. Freezy New Project said, comment, Dianetics is essentially the red pill, but they help they help make you think, tell yourself, right? They help you make you
Exactly.
tell yourself it's really the blue pill. Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
100% exactly.
Yeah.
You're
And
basically going into a different form of reality,
yeah.
and you're becoming part of this echo chamber and part of this cognitive dissonance and whatever. But they think
Mhm.
that's freedom.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I could draw a lot of parallels to my experience in that. Absolutely. Sue Irwin. Hi, Sue. As a never in and watching so many videos, definitely learning a lot there. Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Yes, this is great.
Thank you
Really
so
is
much, Sue.
great. Yeah, excellent. Freezing New Project. Question, Marilyn. I'm curious if thinking back on it, did you just say those things just to get through it and get out of there, or did you believe it? Okay, so I think I answered that to a degree. Yeah, a little bit of both. You start to fool yourself, like you said. So um, it's I got to where I didn't trust myself because instead of the reactive mind, we had the sin nature, we had demons, the devil lying to you. If I had a dollar for every time Marlene said the devil's lying to you, or that's just your flesh, which meant you know uh, our version of the reactive mind. It was just the sin nature, what you were born with, that you were trying to be set free from and being the new person which God meant you to be, whatever. Yeah. So it's very similar in a lot of ways. Yeah. Yes, auditing becomes an addiction. I believe it.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
absolutely.
depend on it. Yeah.
Very sad,
Yeah.
again, because it is manipulating people who are addicts. And one way you're getting off drugs, and another way you're spending all your money getting addicted to Scientology. You
Yeah.
know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I was more of kind of in a Sea Org situation.
Mhm.
Because I didn't have to pay for it, and most legitimate religions, you don't have to pay for it, you just go and, you give a lot of people do give 10%, not everybody does, and it's all, there, right, to take advantage of. In my case, it cost my life, it really did. I gave
Yeah.
everything. Yeah. Smoke and
Yeah, and in
mirrors, a
the
lot
end,
of BS, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, whatever you really put into it, you're supposed to get out of it. I mean, even on day one in Scientology, you sign something that basically says like, "Hey, maybe none of this works, but like, here it
Yeah.
is, and whatever's true for you is really true of and none of that is true. It's awful."
Yeah. That's a good point because that's something Aaron said when we were talking about, whether it's, like a religion, authoritarian, and science, this and that,
Yeah.
and he's like, basically, you have the choice to not technically, he says, LRH says, well, believe it or don't believe it, but if you don't believe it, you're in the wrong because if you
Yeah.
really did take it to heart, you would believe it because it's true, but don't believe it just because I said you to believe it. Believe it because it is true and there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. It's true. But if you don't believe it, there's something wrong with you.
Hmm.
That's and that's
Yeah, because
exactly what
it's
happened to us. Yeah. If I was doing it right, if I was praying enough, fasting enough,
hmm
surrendering enough, going the what Marlene called the way of the cross enough, bearing my cross, repenting, all that, if I was doing all that right, then I would know that she had the truth, and the truth will set you free. And actually that little bit of a scripture verse is in We Stand Tall lyrics, by the way.
yes, it is.
Like,
Yes, it is.
knowing
I
the
know.
truth will set you free. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yep.
Going from zero to eternity. Yeah, we
Yeah,
stand tall. Yeah.
eternity, right?
Um.
Kelly and I are going to I'll give you guys a little sneak peek of something. Let's see if I can find it. So, and we can play this game anytime we talk. Okay, I got to find it. Oh darn. Okay, I think here we go. Yeah, so every time Scientology steals from the Bible, I've got a little sound effect that Kelly gave me. And every time we say something ridiculous, we should have done this in the beginning.
Well, I can't hear.
You
Oh,
can't.
that's I wasn't able to hear.
Oh, you didn't hear the horn?
No. Come on, this is what happens.
You don't hear it?
Yeah,
You don't.
no.
You didn't hear the buzzer either?
I will be on the replay. I'll
Did you
fast.
guys hear it?
I'm
Maybe
sure
it's
they did. It's my end, I'm sure, but no worries.
let me know if you heard the buzzer and the horn, guys, because hopefully I didn't
Yeah.
mess it up.
It's
Oh,
okay. I think
maybe
I
let me just make sure the sound is up. But you hear me talking, right?
of course, yeah, sometimes music and
Okay.
stuff like that, like in an
Oh,
intros, they don't
okay.
come here on my
All
end, but
right.
that's okay. A buzzer and a horn. It's all
Well,
good.
I'm just using you. I'm just using you as a an experiment to see if you can hear it. Did you hear that?
No.
Okay. All right.
It's okay. Again, it's a thing
Okay,
on
they
my
heard it.
my end.
Okay, they heard it.
Yeah,
Good.
but they've heard
I
it.
just want to
Yeah.
make sure it works.
Um, the other thing is, I know I'm pretty sure. I think you did talk to this with Aaron, but in Scientology, when you go onto a major course, when you go into the academy, um, you read something called KSW 1, Keeping Scientology Working 1, and basically, yeah, one of the things is Scientology works 100% of the time as long as it's applied 100% correctly.
Right.
So if it isn't applied 100% correctly, it's 100% your fault, and therefore, what they should be saying is Scientology just doesn't work, because no one has ever applied Scientology 100% correctly. Believe me,
Yeah,
never has that happened.
I've never met an OT. Well, I met lots of
And,
SPs, but I haven't never met an
well,
OTA. But I heard a lot of them are a little bit yikes.
the
Yeah.
OT8s that I've met have been some of the clumsiest, most incompetent people that I've ever met, and it's not against them. I think it's their environment. Like I think genuinely deep down that they probably would be a different person if they hadn't been OT8, but because they're
Mhm,
OT8, they've been indoctrinated into this mentality, and
mhm.
unfortunately they're not what you would think an OT8 should be. They're either just like everyone else, or like I knew one guy, I swear to God, he was so clumsy. He would he would walk over himself. He would bump into things. This was a guy named Herbert when I was in Berlin. His guy was OT8, and I swear to you, he would fall down. He would walk into people. He'd walk into objects, and you're like, you're OT8. You're supposed to exteriorize and look
Right.
around your environment. And like even that, people would look at him and be like, "That guy's OT8." Oh, but I'll be different. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You rationalize
yeah,
it.
cognitive
Absolutely.
dissonance. Yeah. Hmm.
Totally. May the force be with you. Hey there. John A. Tech recently had a guest who described, yes, very appropriate. John A. Tech recently had a guest who describes in a new book, not a long read, 140 pages, I think, explains how in Christianity, the church, quote, implants the shame and guilt, then provides their solution.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like to speak on Christianity in general because I think anybody can believe whatever they want, but that has been my experience. May the force be with you.
Yeah.
I do agree with that personally. Yes. Uh FXP says that is a very old thing and I learned that many years ago. Glad someone is getting that out. Oh, I don't know why. Okay. Well, I guess that's the same thing he was just talking about. Okay.
Hmm.
For some reason, I thought it was a question. I might have missed that one of those FXP. Oh, thank you for the coffee, honey. Hey, I know you've been on the phone. Hi, Dunk. Hello, everybody. He's saying hi to
Say hi to
everybody.
Duncan for me. Yeah.
Mark says hi. He can't hear you because I got the
Sure.
headphones in. Yeah, you can go watch it now, honey. May the force be with you. Love you both. Hey, thank you.
Oh, thank
This is the
you.
healing talk. This has been
Oh,
great.
great.
Absolutely. It's been great. Creepy B5. I love me some Marilyn and Mark. Good to see you again, Mark. Yes.
Yeah, you
I've
too.
always enjoyed your talks. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we got to get a channel fired up again. What is up with
I
that?
got I got banned, so I can't make a channel. So what happened
What?
was in early November, October, November now. It's been a little while. So I had my channel going for a few months. We were doing our Nerdy Bunch, and I was going on Doug's channel. R.I.P. Doug. I miss him very much.
Yeah,
But I was
I do
going on
too.
his. I was going on a bunch with Alex, Apostate Alex, and so forth. And then one day I woke up to an email. I guess maybe it was November. I want to say maybe October, November, somewhere around there, and they
Mhm.
basically just said for like spamming, but it was just such a stupid thing. And then
Doesn't
I
make
appealed. They
sense.
said no, and that was it. So I just can't have. I mean, I have um, um, a YouTube channel which I watch my YouTube videos and whatever on,
Mhm.
but I don't think I can have a second one, and I don't really want to make it the one that I watch my YouTube stuff with into another channel. So
Gotcha.
unfortunately, I tried and got booted off for really stupid reasons that I don't even understand.
I
So
know, of all the yeah,
I tried.
I mean, you're such a nice guy. I mean, some of these, like,
Uh,
really horrible trolls just seem to keep flourishing. It's unbelievable.
my
Unbelievable.
my
Sorry about
Canadian
that.
sensibilities, my overly polite Canadian sensibility didn't help, I
I
guess. I don't know.
I guess
Should have
not.
apologized more.
Oh, yeah, well, that answered my question about the channel. Yeah,
Unfortunately, they took
bummer.
it down, and
Yeah.
yeah, I
Ugh,
tried. Yeah,
frustrating.
I know.
Yeah, so we had a couple of
But
things.
so Marilyn, I was curious if
Yeah,
you wanted,
yeah.
I could get into, and again, this is all at your discretion. But if you wanted to, I think might be interesting to talk about the transition from Dianetics to Scientology,
Mm.
because this is
Mhm.
stuff that I also learned about. Like, why did Dianetics then become Scientology? And so there is
Yep,
a very fascinating history about that. So I've mentioned before when we talk about past lives, right? And we're talking
yep,
about
yep.
thetans now. That's the bridge between Dianetics and Scientology. So what is told in church history, and again, this is not true, but what is told in church history is that somewhere between 1950, when Dianetics was published, and 1952, when L. Ron Hubbard, um, um, he didn't really coin the phrase Scientology. It was used in a book in like 1904 by a German philosopher, but he started to use the word Scientology in 1952. So what he said was that people in Dianetics auditing sessions were uncovering their past lives. And here's the key to this. This is an addition to our to what we talked about in our the actual processing of Dianetics, the actual process itself. Oftentimes, when an engram is not charging or discharging or whatever you want to say, you
Mhm,
ask the pre-clear for an earlier or similar incident.
mhm,
And so it was supposedly told that L. Ron Hubbard had looked over notes that auditors were making, not him, which again, he created this, but that's the church history. And he was seeing that in Dianetics auditing, when people were asking for, an earlier similar incident, that people were recalling past lives. And of course, because he was a scientist, he just had to go with it. Okay. He just had to
mhm.
explore this uncharted territory. There's no real evidence. I mean, sure, probably some people uncovered past lives, not knowing exactly what was going on. But what happened was around 1952 was that the Hubbard Dianetics Foundation, which I think it was called that, or the Hubbard Association for Scientologists International, there's a bunch of different organizations. I think it was actually maybe the Hubbard Dianetics something or other, was going bankrupt because once Dianetics hit the shelves, it sold millions of copies. He made a lot of money,
Yep,
and then all these
mhm,
foundations were started, and they were all franchised. Okay, so that means people had owners. Okay, what
mhm,
happened was he was losing control of the foundation, and he started Scientology to make more money in order for him to then buy back his copyrights and his trademarks for Dianetics. He used the smokescreen of this bridge of past lives to then get into religion, which he says is a study of the spirit. That's not the definition of religion. Religion, as when we did the
right.
Nerdy Bunch, Marilyn, we talked a
Yeah,
lot about that stuff. If anyone wants to go
mhm,
over to the Nerdy Bunch, did a whole hour and a half thing about It's just comparative religious studies, and again, some of it might be more intellectual and not as pragmatic, but whatever. That was a whole thing. That's not really what the I mean, there's a lot of definitions of religion. Studying the spirit like maybe a minor one, if okay, but that's
Right.
what he decided. And so by
Mhm.
1954, the first Church of Scientology was incorporated in LA, Los Angeles,
Right.
and then in 1955, Hubbard founded the founding church, which is in Washington, D.C. So
Mhm.
that was what's
Can I
going
just
on
stop you
behind
right
the
there?
scenes.
I just had
Sure.
one little thought about that is,
Of course, of course.
I did look up the definition, several definitions, as many as I could find on
Yeah.
religion because Aaron and I were talking about that. And
Mhm.
almost all of them, unless you were talking about like a slang version, like, I religiously drink a lot of water or whatever, right?
Yeah.
The definition of religion um, had the word faith and worship. Right. So
Yep.
we were trying to dissect that. It's like, well, yeah, you kind of have to have faith to believe some of this stuff, right? But
Correct.
they say you don't worship any higher power, but you're basically your own god, right?
That's where it gets. That's where it gets into a non-Western kind of term because
Mhm.
Buddhism, which L. Ron Hubbard claimed he was the not the reincarnation of the Buddha, which was Siddhartha Gautama from Nepal, who
Okay.
was the founder of Buddhism. He believed that he
Mhm.
was the reincarnation of the Maitreya Buddha, which is a Buddha in the Mahayana Buddhist traditions. So in
Okay.
Buddhism, like again, they don't have a higher
They don't
supreme
have a god.
god, and
Right.
so but
That's
they're
true.
still considered a religion
Yeah.
because they're non-theistic. Scientology is a non-theistic religion. So what
Mhm.
they worship, you're right, is I think what we could say what they worship is the tech and L. Ron Hubbard and his teachings. Now I know they won't say that,
Oh,
but
Ron
that's
Hubbard.
what they
Yeah.
really do. So
Mhm.
it's not God in the sense of a personal God. It's not
Right.
like the Taoism where everything is the force and everything is spiritual. It's not that kind of reverence, but it's definitely
Mhm.
reverence to Hubbard and his teachings.
Mhm.
And so yeah, that can kind of be considered worship if we stretch, the definition a
Well,
little to not
yeah, I
mean a
mean,
God,
saluting
you
to
know.
his picture and saying, "What would Ron do?" And,
Yeah.
LRH says this, LRH says that. Yeah, it's a little
Yep.
bit,
I
yeah,
mean,
sus.
it is. And then the faith part is faith and belief are also I remember you mentioned that too a little while ago. I have this vague memory, Marilyn. I think I was doing a stream with Doug, and you mentioned this would have been
Yes,
back earlier mid last year, where you mentioned there was a difference between faith and belief, and there actually
yes,
isn't.
yeah.
Right? There really isn't
I remember
technically. I
asking
mean,
you
again,
that, yeah.
we think of them colloquially as different things, but really they're not.
Mhm,
So what do Scientologists, excuse me, what do they believe? Well, they have a set of beliefs that, let's say, in a faith sense, can't necessarily be proven empirically by science. But
mhm.
at the same time, so does everybody, by the way. There's stuff
Right,
that we
yeah.
hold that can't be empirically proven. So again, what's faith? What's belief? It's yeah, it is what it is, right? You
Yeah,
know.
and I remember studying, faith, the word faith and grace and all the, words of the New Testament in the Bible, in the Hebrew
Yeah.
Greek lexicon, because I had
Okay.
all these Hebrew Greek lexicons and commentaries and everything, and I remember it was basically as simple as, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is, the
Yep.
belief in things you can't touch or feel, or
Yep.
prove.
Yeah.
So, yes. Oh,
Which
everybody's
again,
saying, "Do you know Marlene?"
and I do
You
contend that when we talk about faith, everyone has faith in something. There's nobody in
Yep.
the world that is so empirically materialistic that we
Mhm,
have cultures, we have philosophies, we have things that are immaterial in our world that come from our thoughts. So
mhm.
just because someone uses the word faith or whatever, everybody has that. So that's why it goes back to the difficulty of what is a religion versus what is a cult, because that's really
Right.
weird kind of a thing. And what would we mean by a destructive religion and a constructive religion, and can a cult be a religion? But yes, can a cult also be not a religion? Like these kinds of things I like, but they're just
Yeah.
very complicated. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, but, yeah, I do like to delve into that,
Yeah,
It's like roll up my sleeves.
exactly.
I
It's
like
more
the
philosophical, but I get
and
it.
the comparisons have really helped me, not
Yeah.
only, emotionally to be like, "Oh, thank God I'm not alone. Somebody understands me because I can't just go to the grocery store and be like, "Hi, I was in a call," But you all will
Yeah,
listen to my stuff and understand it. But someone says
I
Xenu
do, yeah.
Marlene, and I know that Doug would want us to do this. He came up with this idea and he helped us. So even if you got some water, anything, we're gonna do Xenu Marlene. Everybody partake. So this was our little drinking or imbibing
Mhm.
game. Everybody partake in
Yep.
whatever you have.
I love you, Doug. I miss you very much.
Yes, yes,
R.I.P.
and
Wherever you are.
we do love you, Doug, and
Yeah.
no one can ever replace him in any way. But I love his passion, and that lives on, and thank
Yeah.
goodness his channel is still there. Everybody,
Yep.
as many videos as you can consume, they're amazing, and I want to help continue the work. And
Yeah.
this is part of it because this is what we were this is part of what we had started together. He had so many collaborations going on, so many things he was excited about doing, and we were talking about different cults, and he had other creators that he was collaborating with, and we were kind of getting into the nitty gritty. We'd started with the language, and we had only
Yeah.
done one stream, but we had planned quite a few, and some of them, both of us got busy or whatever, but we had a lot planned. But I had notes and notes of yeah, we talked about like auditing and Dianetics, and we're going to start kind of from the beginning. So I'm glad that you came forward, and that other ex-Scientologists are willing to do this, and it's Ask an
Yeah.
SP. So instead of just Doug, it'll be a lot of you. So I'm excited about
Yeah,
this.
and I'm glad to, a lot of people are very interested on how people get in. And I think like at the bottom level, and I do have to say, unfortunately, there are some wonderful channels, podcasts, and journalists doing wonderful work out there in Scientology. But how people get in on the bottom is usually not something that they focus on. They usually focus on the celebrity aspect, the people who donate millions of dollars, the Sea Org stuff, which is
Mhm.
all important. But a lot of people want to know for their
Yeah,
own peace of mind and for their
yeah.
own sense of experience on,
Mhm.
okay, if I was in this particular vulnerable place, how would Scientology manipulate me in order to give them the know-how to not be manipulated?
To
And
avoid
not
it,
just for
right.
Scientology, and not just for Scientology, but other groups that are like that. So what are the warning signs? And so even though that might not be necessarily, the thing that you're going to find on these bigger sites or whatever, I still think that there's a thirst out there and a hunger out there for that information. And
Mhm.
I'm always appreciative of people like yourself who put me on
Thank you.
just to talk about the bottom level. I mean, I didn't really get on the bridge. I was just in the introduction, but I think that there's a hunger and a thirst for what do you do when you get in? Like what is the actual everyday stuff? Yes, it's
Yep.
interesting. This Sea Org stuff is horrific and it needs to be talked about more, especially with children, with work abuse, with
Mhm.
whatever, people who spend millions of dollars, the celebrity aspect that's manipulated, etc.
Yep.
But then
Yeah.
there's that 100% pragmatic, practical aspect of like, I'm a regular person. I got
Yep.
in, I didn't have a lot of money, I'm not a celebrity, whatever. How is it going to affect the quote unquote average person's, life? And I know there's no such thing as an average person, but that's kind of the idea. So always thankful,
Absolutely.
always thankful for that. Yeah. So I appreciate it, Marilyn, so much.
Oh, not at all. Like yeah, I really I appreciate your input because I like to get up in the feels of it all. Like how did, how does that apply to, how I would feel at the moment, or what I'd be thinking, or how, the process of it. But it's good to
Yeah.
know the basis of how these cults approach things, how they manipulate, and the history of it. I'm very fascinated with how cult leaders start in the beginning, and some of them, a lot of them, do seem to start out fairly genuine. Even
Yeah.
Jim Jones is a prime example. And I
Yeah.
was doing when I first started my channel, I was doing a little series, 10-minute videos called the Cult Leaders Toolbox, and just took
Yes.
a certain little tactic that cults use to manipulate. And I would start by telling a little story, not reveal who I was talking about until like the middle
Mhm, mhm,
of it. And yeah, people were saying that that was good because when you think of Jim Jones, you automatically think about Kool-Aid or Flavor Aid, as I was corrected.
mhm.
You think about that, you think about the massacre, but how did he get to that? And that's just what you were saying about how do we avoid these things? What are some of the traps that these cults kind of use to get you in? And I'm very passionate about spreading the word because I was 20 when I mean I had been primed as a kid because of the culty
Right.
aspects of my church and the fear-based and doctrine and fear mongering and the repetition and all that memorization, everything, right? But I was 20. I wasn't really established in my life yet, didn't have a career, family, or really a direction. And I was out of my parents' house. And that, how college campuses can be
Yeah.
ripe uh, recruiting grounds for cults. So I think that I would love to see some even not necessarily cult education, but coercive control
Mhm.
education in the high schools, before kids are let out on their own. So that's my
Yeah.
spiel. That's my spiel. Yeah.
University is one of those things that I find it
Oh, man, right.
to be a mix. I'm in university right now, but when you're on a big kind of like American college campus and you're in that sweet spot where your prefrontal cortex is still
Mhm.
um, growing and evolving and
Absolutely.
developing, and it doesn't really finish until you're around 25, 26. The good news is that you're probably the most open to ideas, and you're probably the most compassionate that you'll ever be. But then on the other side,
Mhm.
you're also the most the ability to be manipulated and to fall for radical political thinking and social
Mhm.
thinking and cultic thinking, religious thinking, fundamentalist thinking, and even to do destructive things, have destructive actions,
Yeah.
is also up there. And so, yeah, so to get people prepared for just some critical thinking, it's in my culture in Canada, it's rude if we question people and if it's rude if we're argumentative, but people got to get rid of that because if
Yep.
someone is trying to sell you something that's wrong, that's a fraud,
Mhm.
or trying to get you into a cult, it's okay to ask questions. You don't have to be rude to ask a
Yeah.
question, but it's okay. And for me, that was a massive thing when I was 22 because it was like, oh well, I don't want to be rude, so I guess I'll just go and do it, and it's so
Mhm.
manipulative, and it happens in Midwestern culture. It happens all over. There's a lot of people just don't want to
Yeah,
be rude.
polite. Yes. Yeah.
You're not being rude. You're not being rude. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's another thing. Anyway, my two
No,
cents
all
about
good.
my own culture.
No, all excellent points, definitely. And honestly, in this space, I think that we're all learning to be able to ask questions and not have a group think anti-cult, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So, there have been things that come up, and if anything, I have a little bit of background in crisis management. I mean, I'm not like, I don't have a degree in any of that, but I've done enough disaster relief and crisis management as far as just going
Oh,
through the motions of it, and also having a trauma, type background myself. But
yeah.
my
Yeah.
the nonprofit that I founded is considered disaster relief, and I have to not have to, but I actually love to be there for the survivors, and oftentimes they're in shock. And when something happens, like in this community, a lot of times there's not really nothing you can say. I've I remember just last year there was a lovely girl to me. She's in her probably early 30s, but this tiny girl that lost her four big dogs in a fire. And
Oh,
she jumped on my lap and I just held her, you know,
yeah.
and didn't say anything. And now, we're good friends, we're close, but she said, "The first time I met you, I jumped in your lap."
Yeah.
You know? And so, like, when when we got the news about Doug, or we, just different things that happen in the community, I just, there was a little stir last night. I just jumped on at 11:30 and said, "All right, guys, here I am. Let's talk." I usually don't give as much input as I did last night, but with Doug, I think we were all just hurting, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't have anything to say,
Yeah.
but I just sat there and we just sent hearts to each other, and for Doug, and just, you know. So I said all that to say that, when you have any type of group, you usually have to kind of work these things out, as far as
Yeah.
being able to be yourself, being able to ask questions, not being afraid of OSA like it's some kind of boogeyman. Like, don't
Yeah.
ask questions because OSA's going to win. Or, I've been accused of being OSA. I mean, that's
Yeah, I have too. It's ridiculously
oh,
stupid.
really?
I
You're
know.
OSA too?
Oh, all the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
when I first started protesting in 2009, there were a lot of people because I just showed up to a protest, and I had just moved to Los Angeles at the time, and it was the
Wow.
same bullshit. Yeah, excuse my language, but yeah,
No, you can
BS,
swear
same
here.
baloney. Pardon my French. But yeah, OSA, it was OSA, OSA. Not everything is OSA,
Right.
just because
It's like the devil made me do
troll
it.
is some troll is, started a troll channel doing trolly
Mhm.
things. That's doesn't mean they're OSA.
Yeah.
People. I will say about ex-Scientologists who've been in for a long time, that is an aspect of their trauma, and so it's
Yeah.
hard. I mean, I was only in Scientology for 3 years, but like, I don't think I'm ever going to fully get over it. You know what I mean? Like, Scientology will always be with me, sadly, after 3 years. I can't imagine anyone who's gone on for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And
Yeah.
then you
Yeah.
don't just wake up one day and you're a different person. So some of these accusations of OSA, and these are just leftovers that you have to kind of be
Right.
compassionate about,
Absolutely,
because
I agree with that. Yeah. Mhm.
paranoia is a
Right.
massive, massive
Yeah.
part of being a Scientologist. And
Right.
so
I
that
I
doesn't
agree
go
with
away,
that. And there are
you know.
people that have really legitimately been fair gamed by OSA, and have had
Exactly.
OSA, operatives live with them practically. So I do
Yeah.
understand that. I guess where my tongue in cheek kind of goofiness about it, uh, comes off, is when, um I I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's used as an excuse to shut down a
Yeah.
conversation, like a
It
thought-stopping
can be.
cliche. It can be like a thought-stopping cliche, It's like, "Don't give OSA," it was like, "Don't give the devil any foothold,"
Yeah.
"Don't give OSA any foothold," So I just, yeah, I roll my eyes just like that. I'm just like, "Okay, you know what? I'm not, no, no."
But
So,
again, that a lot of that has to do with past traumas, because
yeah,
OSAT, as you mentioned, has done a lot, and they do. I mean, Aaron is getting followed by PIs. Mike
right,
Rinder has been
right,
followed by PIs. That happens, as you say. It doesn't happen every day, 24/7, but it happens. It might have also happened with me. I don't know. I remember a
yeah,
couple times in Los Angeles, I was curious whether or not I was being followed by someone because it was the same kind of person. Didn't last for very long, and maybe it was a
mhm,
coincidence. It stirred me, it triggered me. Um, but who knows? It could have just been someone in my neighborhood who just was walking around when I was walking around. Like, I don't know, and I don't want to let myself get into that paranoia. But
right,
again,
yeah.
it's very difficult for some people to let go
It can
like
be
that,
very
and
real.
I
Well,
understand.
yeah, and I was talking
Yeah,
about, I've gotten it from quote, "never ins," people who were
yeah,
never in Scientology. So, like,
yeah.
yeah, I just think you don't wanna
Happens.
throw things around. It almost gives it, like you said, almost like, because people, this is a real thing that really happens. I think if you
Yeah,
overuse it, it loses its actual meaning,
yeah. It's the boy who cried
so
wolf, right?
yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, it's the
Okay,
it's the
let's talk
SP who cried
cruise.
Osa. Yeah,
Creepy B is inviting you on the SP cruise on
I should go
September
to an SP cruise. You're
21st.
right. Oh,
Actually, there is
uh,
one.
is there? That's
Yes, I'll
cool.
send you the information. Yes, I don't
Yeah,
know if you remember, Chow Yun Smot Cricket, who was a friend of Doug. She used to do his,
sort of. Yeah.
background. She was one of his mods, when, you know,
Oh,
fairly recently, but she used to go in StreamYard and start his things. She is a travel advisor who has been booking
cool.
cruises. Yes, booking cruises for like 30 years. And
Wow.
it had been talked about by some of the OGs and stuff, and nobody really ever, it never came to fruition. So she decided
Yeah.
to take it upon herself, which I'm so excited about. And yeah, she's booking for September 21st from Miami to South Caribbean. And
Nice.
yeah, and she's taking I think it's March 2nd is the deadline to put in a deposit, and I can send you the
Hmm.
information. If you can take
Send it to me. Yeah,
a
I'll
little
have to.
8-day.
I'll
All
take a
right,
look.
that
I
would
mean,
be
yeah,
awesome.
my schedule's a bit up and down, but at least I'll take a look at it. It'd be
All
fun.
right. Yeah. Creepy B wants to know. Oh, Creepy B says, "I wanna go on the cruise. Anyone looking for a roommate? I promise I'm not creepy." I don't know, with a
Well,
name like Creepy B5.
I snore, so it wouldn't work out. I have to get my own room, but still,
That's hilarious. I know, Mark, we can be so serious, but this is a
I
goofy
know.
channel. You know me by now, right?
I do. I do.
Okay.
Of
SBTV fan. I gotta put a little bit of levity in because this stuff is so heavy, you
course.
know?
Oh yeah,
I've
of
heard
course.
that
No, I know that.
this is great. SBTV fan, I've heard that being nice on the internet is suspicious.
Yeah, right.
You're
It's
just
true.
too nice. You're just too nice to be on the internet. Oh, I like this SPTV van guy. He's cool. Everyone should be believing something. I believe I need a second drink. Marlene,
That's a good
yes.
one. That's a good one. Yeah.
Thank you for that
Pass
because
the man a shit. It's
you know how I like to say her name any chance I get. Absolutely. Oh, and this is the other thing too I'm so excited about is that, Cricket named the group because you know when you go on a cruise, you have to have a group to find your people. She named
of
it
course.
The Xenu Marlene group. So I'm like, "Yay, Marlene has a cruise group named after her."
And if there's
'Cause
any
she would
Scientologists on the cruise, they'll be they'll be getting off of it once they see that
Right.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, we're like, "Who's Xenu?" Yeah, yeah. This is a good point, FXP. Comment, another big, huge sign is to alienate people who are not in the
Yeah.
organization.
Us
Absolutely.
versus them. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep,
Oh, there's a ton of
yep,
that in Scientology. Us versus them. They think you know, they know
mhm,
everything and they have all the knowledge and whatever.
yep. So we got Millie the Dandelion, love that handle. For an organization that doesn't believe
Mhm.
in therapy, they certainly use a fair few things from there. Granted,
Yeah.
they've twisted it beyond recognition. This is so enlightening. Thank you both so much. Thank you. Yes,
Just
that's
to
so
just
true.
to get into very very briefly this whole dichotomy or duality between the analytical mind and reactive mind, I have been
Mhm,
told, and I don't know this because I've never studied it, but I've told that that's very Freudian. This idea
mhm.
of the two minds. Yeah, I think he called it something different, but that's and Freud is like the founder of modern psychiatry, not psychology, but
Right,
psychiatry. So
right.
he didn't really hate psychiatrists. He just thought that he had a better product than he was competing with, and that's why
Until
they
later
don't
on
like.
when the psychiatrist when it became a religion, and then the
Yep,
evil psychiatrists were the
yep.
reason for all of our problems. Yeah,
Yeah, Xena
interesting.
was a psychiatrist, by the way.
I'm sure.
Don't know if you knew that one. Yep, Xena was a psychiatrist.
Wow.
Yep.
So funny. SBTV fan, during COVID, internet algorithm gave me inspirational quotes and lovely pictures. I liked some of them and started getting more intense quotes, so I stopped. Later on, I saw in news that it was a trap. Yeah, can be.
Yeah,
Good point.
algorithm is awful.
Mhm. I know. Sometimes I'm like, "Where did this come from?" And I swear, Duncan's been talking about, he hasn't had one, but he's really interested in NDEs, near death experiences, and we've done a
Hmm.
couple streams. I talk about it. I'm very skeptical because I believe that I don't know what I know. All I know is that I don't know, that's all I know. So, yeah, but he's really into it. And I have not watched any of those videos. I've never looked them up, never done anything. And now they're popping up on my
Yeah,
feed. I'm like, how is this
Duncan.
happening? They listen. Yeah, it's Duncan's fault. How do they know? It's like they're listening in on our conversations when I say, I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, you never know. It's wouldn't put it
Mhm.
past Google or Microsoft, but
Yeah.
we're all
Oh,
kind
they're
of
all.
powerless to it at this point. Especially AI.
Mhm.
That's gonna really screw up politics and everything. Because if you can, make a politician literally perfectly and say something terrible, and people don't know what's real and what isn't real. It's so awful. I just, oh man, I hope things like that kind of stop and we go back to normal. And but I don't think it will. I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Ugh, I know.
Yeah, well,
It is a
yeah,
little scary. Yeah, that's another one,
yeah.
I can't remember the name of the guy, I think he was Middle Eastern or from India or something, that was explaining, like, the worst case scenario with AI, and I was just like, "I can't listen to this either." 'Cause Duncan was watching that too.
You
It's
know,
just too
when I went
scary.
to broadcast and journalism school, the biggest example that we used for political manipulation is the very famous 1960 presidential debate against Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy. On
Hmm,
television, Richard Nixon was sweating, so most people thought he lost the debate. But on the radio, they thought Nixon won the debate. And so
wow.
that is one of the ideas of media, how it manipulates our perspectives. But now with AI, you won't even know if the person who's talking to you is actually real or a computer program.
Right,
And so
yeah.
it won't even matter. It won't
Scary.
even matter.
Mhm.
It's just, oh my God. Anyhow.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. People could be, indicted on charges for something they obviously didn't do, but they can
Yeah.
manipulate media and cameras and everything else. Yeah.
Oh
AI
my
is
God. Yeah.
alarming, yes. All right. Well, I'd like to,
Thank you, Marilyn.
keep
Yeah.
stay I could talk all day, and I will be on with Aaron, I think, later. We'll see, how he is with his timing. We'll see what happens, but yeah, let's do this again sometime. Keep in touch.
Of course.
This was
Yeah.
great,
Anytime
and
you
thank
want to get into a nitty gritty on anything, really, I've
Oh,
got,
yeah.
perspectives on everything. So go right ahead.
Let's
And I'm
do
always
it.
here.
All right. Thank you
Yeah.
so
But thank
much.
you again, Marilyn.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone who's
everybody.
in the chat and listening. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.